where she is entertaining other people in the bedroom. He enjoyed having the freak offs.
She's being asked specifically about the drug use.
She is clearly excited about freak off.
The room went dead silent. No whispers, no phones, just shock. Cassie had just said it. Diddy violently raped her after she refused one of his infamous freak-offs. Then it happened. Diddy snapped, jumped up, face twisted in rage. The courtroom erupted. Witnesses say the judge nearly threw him out. Security? On high alert. Hands ready. Day 4 flipped everything. No one saw this twist coming. And now, we've got the exact words Cassie said that pushed him over the edge.
I think the defense naturally is trying to poke holes sort of in some of the earlier testimony that Sean Combs was always the person in control and that Cassie Ventura was forced into these situations. So the defense all day have really been laying out a lot of text messages and a lot of emails that tell the story of a very complicated relationship from the very beginning. In fact, in 2007, they showed the jurors an email where Ventura basically says after 2 months of having a kiss with Combs and saying that's when their relation started after her 21st birthday. After their relation started 2 months later, jurors saw an email where she basically says, I love you. I'm so excited to be a part of this relationship with you. How she had plans of a future with him. So they're laying out somebody that was excited about the idea of being with Sean Combs at 21 years old and her future plans. But also a little bit of jealousy. In that same email, she makes reference to wondering if maybe Combs should have went after her friend, Carrie, and then said maybe you should have went with Carrie because she could help you or, you know, do the things that you want her to do or something to that effect. But she also said, which I thought was really interesting in that email, Rachel, is I want to be the woman that you want me to be. Like almost this idea of teach me what it is I need to be to keep you happy. And that was 2 months into the relationship.
About how she had to go to rehab. And one really important note as we ended yesterday, Nicole, was this really sad moment that she talked about how even after she left Sean Combs, even after their relationship ended, and she was with her husband and had 2 babies, she's on her 3rd right now, 9 months pregnant, she said that she felt suicidal thinking about the life that she had with Sean Combs, and even asked her husband at one point saying, you've got this, right? If something were to happen to me, you would be able to take care of these children. And said she tried to and wanted to walk out into traffic and that her husband had to stop her. That is the long-standing PST that she has had from this relationship.
What does a man worth $900 million do when the secrets he spent decades hiding come crashing into the courtroom? For Diddy, he didn't just lose composure. He lost control. Completely. And the moment it happened was so sudden, so raw you could feel the energy shift. It was day 4 of the trial, a day no one expected to explode like this. The gallery was packed, every reporter locked in, phones raised, fingers hovering, ready to go viral the second something snapped. Cassie had finally taken the stand, and everyone knew her testimony could break this case wide open. But what no one knew, what no one could have predicted, was how Diddy would react when she started speaking. Because in that room, as Cassie described what allegedly happened behind closed doors, everything fractured. I spoke to 3 people seated just feet away from Diddy, and what they described was chilling. He looked calm at first, one court staffer said, bored almost. But then his whole energy changed, like something inside him snapped. His face tightened, his eyes went blank, then wild. His jaw clenched. You could see his fists balling up, his knuckles turning white, and then came the breathing, sharp, shallow, erratic. He started rocking in his chair. Security noticed, and they moved, not walking, but positioning, closer to the defense table, hands twitching near holsters, because something was coming, and then it did. Cassie described a graphic and disturbing detail, an act Diddy allegedly forced her to do. That's when he exploded. He jumped up violently. His chair crashed backward, slamming into the wooden railing with a bang that made everyone flinch. But it wasn't the noise that rocked the courtroom. It was the rage. "That's a lie!" he screamed. "You know that's a damn lie!" Pointing, yelling, spitting his words. His voice echoed. Even the reporters froze, phones down. Everyone stunned. Lawyers rushed to him, literally grabbing his arms to pull him down. The judge pounded the "what" gavel 3 times. "Order! Order in my courtroom!" he shouted. But Diddy wasn't done. He fought against his own legal team, pushing their hands off. One lawyer leaned in and whispered, "Sean, stop. This is exactly what they want." The judge leaned forward, stared directly at him, and gave a warning that felt like a final blow. "Mr. Combs, control yourself, or you will be removed from this courtroom immediately." For a moment, just 1 second, it looked like Diddy was going to be dragged out in cuffs. His chest was heaving, sweat pouring down his temples, his body still tense, still ready to snap, but slowly, very slowly. His team managed to calm him down. He sat back in the chair, but he wasn't the same man, because what the world had just seen wasn't a celebrity having a tantrum. It was a man falling apart in real time. One music executive who's worked with Diddy for years told me, "I've seen him pissed, but this, he looked like he was breaking down, like the mask finally came off." Another witness described the aftermath, his designer suit soaked with sweat, tie crooked, face glistening, like someone unraveling at the seams. The judge called a 15-minute recess, but everyone knew the damage was already done. Jurors had seen everything, every twitch, every scream. And Cassie, she didn't move, didn't blink, just sat there, ice cold, like she had expected this. When court resumed, Diddy was silent, but the silence wasn't calm. It was loud, louder than any outburst. And now, the internet is asking, is this the unraveling of an empire, or just the beginning of what he's been hiding all along? Because if this is how he reacts to one testimony, what will happen when the next bomb drops?
Her voice is low at times. The defense did tell her if it's too much, I can read them, but there were many times early on this morning where she read some of those explicit details where she is clearly excited about a freak off and talks about entertaining other people in the bedroom.
And what has Diddy's demeanor been in this cross-examination as well?
There was a moment where Sean Combs was nodding in agreement when they brought up a message that he sent her where he said, one of my favorite times of the freak-offs is when we're able to make love after. And then she responds, "That's the same for me." Now, what's interesting here is that does match what she told prosecutors or what she's been telling the jury all along, which is she did this and she said, but she really wanted to spend time with him after the fact. So he was shaking his head at this message where he's almost, I guess, agreeing that he did say, without him saying it, he enjoyed having the freak offs and then having sex with her after the fact. And her saying, "I agree with you. I love having sex with you after too."
Cassie Ventura today looking a little more subdued. She's got her hair pulled back. She's wearing a blazer, and she's being asked right now by the defense. This is the first day of cross-examination. She's being asked specifically about the drug use in the relationship that she had for all those years with Sean Combs. What drugs they took, how much they took, what they felt like when they were on them, what they felt like when they were coming off of them, what the mood was like. Anna Estevado is conducting the cross-examination for Sean Combs' defense, and we did get this clue from the opening statements that the defense really does want to.
He thought his secrets would stay buried. He thought she'd never talk. But then Cassie opened her mouth, and the courtroom exploded. What she described wasn't just disturbing. It was calculated, cold, predatory, and weaponized. Forget everything you think you know about celebrity parties. Because what Cassie exposed in court wasn't just scandal, it was a system. She called them freak-offs. The word might sound like some twisted after-party, but what it really was? A trap. It all started like a scene out of a music video. Lavish penthouses in New York, gated mansions in Miami, private islands far from the cameras where the rich and famous could do anything. And no one would know, but when the crowd thinned out, when the lights dimmed and the champagne ran dry, that's when things turned dark. In a voice so quiet the court had to lean in to hear, Cassie said, "He made sure I drank heavily. Every time. And then he'd bring in men. Not friends, not guests. Paid male sex workers. And while she was drugged, numb, and slipping in and out of control, Diddy watched. Sometimes directed, sometimes filmed, sometimes joined. You could feel the air leave the room as she described it. He choreographed everything. Like a twisted director calling out camera angles. Cassie said it happened over 30 times across 5 years. And then came the receipts, printed screenshots, black and white proof. In one message from 2014, Diddy allegedly warned, "You better show up tonight or that video from Vegas goes online tomorrow." Another one? "Nobody will work with you if they see what I have on my phone." The courtroom fell silent. No one moved. No one blinked. Even Diddy stopped breathing, because now it wasn't just her word, it was evidence. And then Cassie said the words that changed everything. "I felt worthless, like I wasn't a person anymore, just something he owned." But what truly shattered the silence was when she named names. She named specific hotels, specific dates, and celebrities. People who were there, people who knew, people who walked away. Before things got worse, that's when Diddy lost it. He'd kept still for most of the testimony. But when the names started dropping, his mask cracked, and Cassie wasn't finished. She described a system, a pattern, a method. She claimed he drugged her drinks without her knowing, hired men who were paid for their silence, and kept all the videos. As leverage, every time she tried to leave, he reminded her what he had, what the world would see, what her family would think. He turned those tapes into her prison, and this wasn't about parties gone too far. This wasn't celebrity drama. This was abuse, planned, perfected, and preserved on film. So when Diddy screamed in court, when he stood up and erupted, it wasn't just anger, it was fear, because the world had just seen who he really was, without the lights, the Grammys, or the fame. Now fans are asking the one question that Diddy has no answer for. If this is what he did behind closed doors, what else is hiding in the shadows? And more importantly, who else knew?
They have their notebooks in their hand. They're coming in. They're very alert. And I think this is one of those testimonies where you have no choice but to pay attention and almost be flabbergasted, obviously, at some of what you're hearing, because it's not only just insight into somebody's sex life, but the details are disturbing at times, especially during that prosecution testimony when we saw some of the alleged abuse, or we saw pictures of her after a beating of some kind, according to her. But the jurors are definitely paying attention. I don't see anyone that's not keeping their focus on Cassie Ventura. And also I noticed them taking notes a lot of times.
And the children, as they were exiting court yesterday, 2 of the girls were seen crying. How emotional have they been in court?
Again, I cannot imagine if that was my father or somebody close to me up there and having to hear details of their sex life. Those are young women. They lost their mother, one of them, the twins. So no one can probably quite understand what it is that they're going through. But I think that's something that you think about on both sides, to look at Alex Fine, which is Cassie Ventura's husband, and think about him having to listen to all that's being said about the type of woman that Cassie Ventura was versus the person that's expecting, their third child together now. So whether it's Combs's family or Ventura's family that's there to support her, her brother and her husband, Alex Fine, I think it's difficult on both sides. Seen him taking notes from the beginning. I see him put his glasses on. He gets very close to the screen when they're reading some of those text messages. So he's paying attention.
Now, Ventura confirmed that she and Combs had conversations about a swingers lifestyle, but at the freak-offs, they were very different.
Yeah, so she talked about this idea where I guess Combs wanted her to watch him have sex with another woman. She said that happened 2 or 3 times, but that he mentioned it frequently.
Kim Porter came up today in testimony. What was the significance there?
The defense said early on that this case would be about infidelity, love, and jealousy. And this is where they brought that up today when they brought up Kim Porter's name. The defense asked Cassie Ventura, are you jealous, or were you jealous of Kim Porter? And Ventura sort of contemplated, but did get to this moment where she said, knowing that Combs spent holidays with his family, which meant with Porter, did bother her. And she admitted that. They also pointed out that there was testimony where she talked about being insanely jealous overall as a girlfriend. So, yeah.
We're hearing the judge wants Cassie off the stand tomorrow. Will the prosecution and the defense get equal time?
Yeah, as long as there aren't any additional motions, I think that is the goal, to have her off the stand by tomorrow.
Why do you think that? What's the reasoning behind wanting her off the stand tomorrow?
In the very beginning, Rachel, they told us that she would likely be on that stand 2 to 3 days. So here we are.
What Cassie revealed in court didn't just shake the room, it froze it. Even veteran reporters, people who've heard the worst, looked away. And what came next was darker than anyone ever expected. It wasn't just about what happened at those so-called freak-offs. It was what happened when she finally said no. The atmosphere changed in an instant. Cassie, clutching a tissue, inhaled deeply. Her gaze didn't flinch. She stared directly at the jury. Not at Diddy. Then, she said the date that would haunt everyone listening. March 2018, Miami. They were there for a music event. Another session had been arranged. 2 strange men Cassie had never seen before. But this night was different. She was sober, and she refused. At first, Diddy laughed, like it was a joke. But when he realized she was serious, his smile vanished. His voice dropped. And then he snapped. Ungrateful, he called her. After everything I've done for your career, this is the least you could do. She left, alone, back to her hotel room, back to what she thought was safety. But at 3:17 a.m., that illusion shattered. The pounding on her hotel door was violent. Security footage later confirmed it was Diddy, drunk, furious. She opened the door just to tell him to leave, but he forced his way in. Cassie's voice trembled. As she recounted the nightmare, he threw her on the bed, tore her clothes, and assaulted her while she begged him to stop. "Please stop, you're hurting me." His reply, "Shut up. This is what you deserve for embarrassing me in front of those people." 2 jurors flinched. Another, an older woman, quietly wiped away tears. Even seasoned court reporters couldn't meet her eyes. But the next revelation broke the room. Cassie's lawyer revealed medical records from March 9th, 2018, the very next morning. Urgent care, bruises on her wrists, thighs, neck, signs consistent with sexual assault. Photos were shown to the jury, not to the public. One male juror asked for a break. The judge didn't hesitate. Cassie explained how she'd lied to the doctor, told them she fell during a dance rehearsal. She was too scared, too ashamed, and worst of all, she believed no one would take her word over his. She covered the bruises with makeup.
Says she was forced to participate in, of course, those freak-offs. The defense began establishing the love that Combs and Cassie had at the beginning of their relationship, how things really started, then escalated. They showed an exhibit of email exchanges that included messages from Combs that read, quote, "It makes me so happy that you would fly from Atlanta for me." And then Cassie replying, "I am a very lucky woman. I would fly wherever you needed me." And other exchanges that said, "Going to sleep now so it can be tomorrow faster." And then Combs replying, "I love my baby." Cassie saying on the stand that she got to see a private version of Combs that the public and even his own family didn't see, revealing she believed that Combs truly loved her. The defense also trying to establish there was nothing coercive about these freak-offs between the two that she has been describing for jurors these last few days. They've repeatedly described that Combs' sexual preferences as part of a swingers lifestyle, and that Cassie seemed eager, in fact, to participate in these freak-offs. Like another message that read, "I'm always ready to freak off." That's a quote. And another one that said, "When we used to freak off, when we were so in love, there was no question asked. It just felt right." And when asked why she agreed to the freak-off, she said, "I just wanted to make him happy." Cassie testifying that she would help get supplies for the freak-offs. She would call the drugs that she took vitamins. All of this to show she had an agency in these sexual activities.
Who was in that courtroom when one of the most powerful men in music completely lost it in front of the world? Not just fans, not just reporters, but everyone who matters. The courtroom was packed like a blockbuster premiere, except this wasn't a show. This was real, and it was unraveling fast. In the front row sat Cassie's parents and her younger sister. Someone told me their reactions said everything. When Cassie described the abuse, her mother closed her eyes, gripping her husband's hand so tight, her knuckles turned white. But when Diddy erupted, their expressions didn't show fear, they showed confirmation, like they'd finally seen the monster they always feared was hiding behind that smile. And you won't believe who showed up to support him. 3 major music execs, people who built empires with him, were seated right behind his defense team. These weren't nobodies, these were insiders, legends of the industry. When Diddy snapped, their masks cracked. One immediately whipped out his phone and started texting. Another stared ahead, frozen, trying to act like nothing was happening. And the third, he literally put his hand over his face, like he couldn't bear to be seen with this man anymore. And when it was over, all 3 bolted out a side door to avoid cameras. Why run, unless there's something to hide? What the public didn't know was that security had already been heightened. 2 extra officers had been posted that morning. Why? Because Diddy had been acting off. A bailiff told us. His leg was bouncing under the table. He kept muttering, angrily, into his lawyer's ear. Little signs, little cracks. But they were watching. Then, it snapped. The jury, they caught everything. One woman, gray hair, middle-aged, sat scribbling furiously in her notebook until her pencil snapped from the pressure. You don't forget moments like that. A legal expert told us, outbursts like this, they're defense nightmares. Because jurors don't just listen to facts. They watch behavior. And when someone explodes like that, it starts to make everything else seem a whole lot more believable. The media section, standing room only. TMZ, Billboard, Rolling Stone. Every headline outlet was there. And they got it all. One veteran reporter looked straight at us after and said, "I've covered celebrity trials for 15 years. But this was the moment his entire image, everything he built, fell apart in seconds. You can't unsee that. Even the court staff, the ones who've seen it all, looked stunned. The stenographer, still typing furiously, recording every word Diddy screamed. All of it. Now part of the official record. This wasn't a hidden camera moment. This wasn't whispered gossip. This was Diddy losing control in front of the exact people who hold his future. The judge, the jury, the press, the industry, and Cassie's family, who had waited years to be believed. One courtroom observer whispered to us as we stepped out, for a man who spent decades controlling his image down to the pixel, this was his worst nightmare playing out in 4K, because in that moment, he didn't just lose his temper, he lost the illusion. And maybe, just maybe, he showed the world who he really is. But the real question now is, was this the final crack? Or just the beginning of something even darker?
You know, it's the man has no class. He has no kindness in his dark, dark heart. And he's depraved. That's my opinion. This is a depraved, disgusting individual about whom I wish to hear nothing after this trial is done. The question is he a criminal? You know, is he basically akin to a mob boss running several criminal enterprises? And while it's very clear to me he is a depraved, disgusting person, we have to prove that he violated the law. I actually think it's going to be pretty easy, but I can see what the defense is doing here, trying to say, all right, he has these, quote, freak-offs, you know, weird, kinky group sex in Hollywood. That's not an illegal thing. It happens all the time.
Cassie Ventura, where she revealed that after the relationship had ended with Sean Combs, there was an incident where he raped her. She talked about how later on she had PTSD flashbacks of her experience with him, of the freak-offs. And at one point she came home and told her husband while their kids were sleeping that she just couldn't take it anymore and thought about walking into traffic.
If you don't have the consent of the women or the men, as the case may be, it is illegal. But okay, we're going to argue over whether they were willing participants. It's almost like a Harvey Weinstein situation where he's going to say they willingly took drugs.
Another thing we learned about yesterday was her drug addiction. She said that she had an addiction to opiates, Errol.
They're going to say, absolutely not. He drugged me against my will. Maybe there were drugs in that baby oil, maybe in another way, but I definitely didn't consent to being drugged or to being raped or sodomized by P. Diddy.
And singer Dawn Richard from the girl group Danity Kane, she is likely on the famous people list because she's one of Diddy's many accusers.
Yeah.
Not in his criminal case, but she sued him civilly last year, claiming that she saw him abuse Cassie, his girlfriend, and that she herself was sexually assaulted, deprived of food, and cheated out of money that she was owed. Guess what? You're going to hear from her attorney in just a hot minute. But first, I want to bring in News Nation correspondent Caitlin Becker, who's outside the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Caitlin's been covering this case, gavel to gavel. Okay, first of all, let's just start with the drip, drip, drip of all the names, because the internet is really on fire. What happened today?
You know, Ashley, a lot of the same things. You get asked these same exact questions about these celebrities with no real context as to why. And you really hit the nail on the head a minute ago when you said jury selection's kind of boring, but not in the Diddy case. Most prospective jurors who come into jury selection have never heard of the defendant, let alone have an opinion of them. But what we heard today was prospective jurors who were excluded because they flat out said they don't like Diddy going into it. They don't have a favorable opinion. One guy said he believed Diddy has enough money to buy his way out of jail. So those jurors immediately excluded. There was also some laughs in the courtroom today from the attorneys and the judge when one prospective juror said that he couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be able to smoke marijuana for all 8 to 10 weeks of the trial. So that person was excluded. But by the end of the day, they've added 10 more people to that pool of 45 that they're trying to get.
They thought he'd stay calm. They thought he'd keep the mask on. But then the tape played. For 3 days, Diddy sat stone-faced in that courtroom, unshaken, untouched, untouchable. Witness after witness testified to things most people couldn't even stomach. Former employees spoke of abuse, hotel staff were paid off, therapists read notes from years ago, and still, he sat there, cool, smirking, in control. But what nobody expected was what came next, and what Cassie's team dropped in the courtroom changed everything, because at exactly 2:17 p.m., the illusion shattered. Cassie started talking about a late-night call. Not just any call. The call that exposed everything. He rang me at 3 a.m., she testified. He was furious, talking fast. He said if I ever told anyone about the freak-offs or what he did to me in Miami, he'd make sure my family paid the price. That's when the temperature in the courtroom dropped. Her lawyer stood, calm, calculated. Your Honor, he said, we'd like to introduce Exhibit 47. Diddy's lawyers jumped up. Objection, panic, chaos, but the judge wasn't having it. The evidence had been cleared. What happened next? A secret recording Cassie made in 2018, kept hidden until this exact moment, began to play. The room froze. The audio crackled. But the voice, crystal clear. You think anybody's gonna believe you? I run this industry. You're done. Your mom's job? Gone. Your sister's college? Consider it erased. I know people everywhere. It was Diddy, on tape, threatening everything she loved, and in that instant, his face cracked. Observers say his jaw locked, eyes widened. He leaned in, whispering something frantic to his attorney. Even his lawyer looked stunned, the entire defense team blindsided. This wasn't just her word anymore. It was his voice, saying the quiet part out loud. And then Cassie looked him